Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. An Awful Thanksgiving, submitted by Jesse. I'm a 28-year-old female. Call me Jessie. Last year, my Thanksgiving night went from crap to worse. My boyfriend was a resident at a hospital in our city and had to work on Thanksgiving Day. We knew about it, and our families lived back in Seattle. We were in Miami at the time. Our grandparents lived back there as well, and it was just easier for us to spend the year apart. I mean, it sucked, but it made sense as I didn't have the day off after either. I thought about making the turkey and all the trimmings, but Sven and I decided to wait until that weekend when we would both be at home and celebrate together then. He took off for work around noon, and I knew he wouldn't be back until after midnight, so I just did stuff around the townhouse and then opted for Chinese food. I ordered some takeout, drove out to the place to pick it up, and on my way out of the building I noticed only one other car in the strip mall parking lot. It was this big old blue car, like 80s big. There was a guy and a woman standing next to it smoking cigarettes, and I figured they were just waiting for their own order to be ready, and then I just got into my car. As I was doing that, I dropped my purse and all my junk spilled out onto the ground. I picked it up and got into my car and then drove home to watch junk TV and eat junk food. I was missing Sven and texted him once in a while, but he was really busy and didn't always get back to me right away. I FaceTimed with my family and his family later, and then just went back to vegging on TV. That's when I heard something outside. Let me explain. We lived in a set of townhouses, 5 to a building. We rented one on the end of the building, so we had a deck in back and windows on the far side. And part of the reason we wanted that unit was to catch the morning sun. Well, I heard a soft tapping noise at one of the windows in our living room, and so did my cat Rizzo. My other cat, Frank, yes, we're fans of the Jerky Boys, was upstairs but came down later, and I'll get to that. I went over to the left window and looked out, and there was nothing out there. It was starting to get darker, so I went to turn on a light, and that's when I heard the tapping coming from a window in the dining room next to the living room. Rizzo ran over there and meowed loudly, and that's when Frank came down. I followed, but again there was nothing there. I looked up and down the tree line that was out there, but there was just nothing, so I chalked it up to the wind and went to get a glass of wine. That's when the doorbell rang. I went to it and looked out the side window first, and again, no one was there. I was starting to get scared and texted Sven. No reply for 10 minutes, and then a "probably just kids messing around" message came through. I decided to calm down and take my Staffy Bugsy for a quick walk before it got too dark. He's a great dog, but he can be menacing with strangers. He's awesome to have when I'm home alone, and he loves chasing Frank and Rizzo. He was actually sleeping on the back deck when the bell rang, otherwise he would have been on that like stink on a monkey. So I walked him around our complex, which was pretty big, and on the way back, I noticed that big old blue car I saw at the strip mall restaurant. It was parked in a community area across the street from our place. Again, not thinking clearly, I blew it off. Maybe it wasn't the same car, I thought. I got Bugsy inside and gave him a treat and grabbed my wine I had left out. And that's when my phone buzzed, and a text from an unknown number said, "So sad. Home alone on Turkey Day." Thinking it was a friend from work, I just wrote back, "I'm fine, who's this?" There was nothing for a few minutes, and then another text. "You know who." And who was spelled wrong. It was spelled H-O-O. Yeah, really smart. I said I didn't know who it was, and if they weren't going to tell me, to just go fuck off. Nothing for a few minutes. And then I got another text that said, "This wine is tasty. You have good taste." I looked at my glass and then went into the kitchen. The bottle was no longer on the counter where I left it. I then began thinking maybe I had left the front door open when I went outside, and one of the kids that maybe was messing around came in and grabbed it. I was kind of buzzed and not thinking super straight. I just replied, "Knock it off. Enjoy it and leave me alone. I'm blocking you." And that's what I did. Hooray for iPhones. But a few minutes later, I got another text. "Oh, that's not nice." Again, I texted, "Seriously, who is this?" No response. I texted Sven again and then tried calling him, but he didn't answer. I was getting freaked out at this point, but not panicking. And then I got another text. "This is a very nice place you have. I love your dresser and mirror." That's when I nearly pooped my pants. I did have a very ornate bedroom set my grandmother had given me. At this point, I was standing in our front foyer looking up the stairs, and then another text came through. "Come on up, sexy." That was it. I dialed 911 and ran into my living room. Why I didn't go out the front door, you ask? When I had turned around while I was calling, the doorbell rang, and then Bugsy came flying over to see who was at the door. Over my dog barking, I told the person on the line that I thought someone was in my house and that there was someone else outside. They told me to calm down and they'd send someone out as quickly as possible. I got another text while I was on the line and it said, "That was a bad idea." And I told the dispatcher that too. "Someone really needs to get out here," I said. And by now, Bugsy had left the front door and was at our French doors at the back patio going crazy over there. And that's when my phone died. I started crying, calling for Bugsy, and could hear someone banging on the French doors. But then it stopped, and a few minutes later it started again at the front door. Now I was panicking. My phone charger was upstairs, and I was not leaving the living room until the police came. That's when I remembered I had my work laptop on our dining room table. I'm a realtor, and I use a phone Skype line to make calls once in a while, and as scared as I was, as crazy as Bugsy was going, I got the courage up to turn on my laptop and started yelling for Skype to open. I called my boyfriend's hospital and screamed at the woman who answered to get Sven. This was an emergency. I then yelled for Bugsy, and he came running over to me and sat down. And that's when I heard something or someone moving around upstairs. I said I was panicked before, but now I was beyond terrified. Everything got real quiet. The front doorbell rang again, and a muffled voice said, "Police, open up. Are you okay?" I didn't know if it was a trick or what, and Bugsy ran to the door. Thankfully, I looked outside and saw a police car in front of our place. The person at the door yelled to get my dog back, and I got Bugsy into the kitchen and told him to stay. He's a very smart dog, by the way. I went back to the front door, and there was this big policeman standing there, and I let him in. And before I could say a word, he said, "Are you all right?" I nodded, and he opened the door wider and asked, "Do you know this guy?" Standing out front was the guy I had seen with the big car. He was being held by another policeman. I shook my head, and the man I was talking to said, "Detain him." The other policeman said something into his radio, and the two walked away. And I got my senses back, and I said, "I think there's somebody upstairs." The policeman yelled out for them to come down slowly with their hands visible at all times. There was silence other than Bugsy whining in the kitchen. He wanted to help, but he also knew his commands. The policeman yelled again, and there was a shuffling. And down the stairs came this woman I had seen with the other guy, except she was wearing some of my lingerie. She had this crazy smile on her face as she walked down with her hands in front of her. The policeman just turned her around, handcuffed her, and asked her name. She didn't say anything, just kept that weird smile going. He said something into his radio too, and the other policeman came running up and took her by the arm. The first policeman told me to wait where I was, and then his partner came back, and they both went upstairs. After a few seconds, there was some shouting and a loud thump on the floor that broke Bugsy's training, and he came running to me. After more shouting and thumps, the policeman came downstairs with another woman who had been hiding in our bedroom closet. They all went outside as Bugsy barked at the woman, and I had him on his lead by that time. A few minutes later, the first policeman came back, and Sven was with him. He'd heard something was wrong, and when I didn't answer anyone on the Skype call I made, he came flying home. There were tons of questions, and another policewoman came in and asked me if anything was missing or broken. I told her nothing was broken, no windows or doors, but I hadn't been upstairs, and I admitted that I wasn't sure if I had left the front door unlocked. She and I went upstairs as Sven talked to the policeman, and when we went into my bedroom, the French doors on the back deck were open. They were the same kind of doors that we had downstairs. But what was freaky was there were ropes tied to each of the 4 posts on our bed, and there was a bag on the floor with duct tape, more ropes, and some knives. Oh, and a bunch of crystal meth. Outside on the deck, there was an extension ladder propped up. The property manager had left it out, and that's how they got in. As we pieced everything together, when I had dropped my purse, some business cards fell out, and I didn't see them. They must have gone under my car. On my card was my cell number. They had followed me home after they saw me at the Chinese place. The police took all of them away, and they were all totally shot on meth. And they all also had warrants out for them as well. What swell people. When asked why they followed me and broke in, one of the women said that I looked fun. When asked about the bag and ropes, she again said, "Well, doesn't she look fun?" Everything calmed down as best it could, and Sven stayed with me as I cried and cried. The cats were hiding somewhere due to the commotion, and Bugsy sat at my feet on the couch. All 3 of them were charged but were extradited to Georgia on bigger charges, and I only had to do a Zoom deposition, so I never saw them again. After that, I convinced Sven to see if he could get something back home in Seattle, and that's when we moved. We're looking forward to a calmer Thanksgiving with the family this year. I'll keep you posted. Black Friday Insanity, submitted by Mark265. 3 years ago, my sister convinced me and my brother to go to a large electronics place on Black Friday at like 4 a.m. Both of us don't live in our hometown anymore and said, "What the hell? Maybe we can score some cool stuff." We took a long nap after dinner and then woke up around midnight. We had a snack and then jumped into my sister's SUV. Allie was driving, and me and Jeff were planning on having a few road pops and some smoky on the way to make it more fun. When we got to the place, it was already mobbed with people waiting in this long-ass line. Jeff said, "Fuck this, let's just go home." But I told him Schmef Schmai had a deal on 65-inch OLED TVs that we couldn't miss out on. So we hung out in the car waiting for the doors to open and avoid the crazy rush of all the tools that do this every year. After a while, we were pretty toasted. My sister was shaking her head, and in we went. It was a madhouse. People fighting for this and that, people screaming at each other, totally effed up scene. We went to see about the TVs and if we could buy them and then pick them up later. And it turned out they had a few left as the cheaper TVs went quick, but we had to take the ones that we wanted right then. It also turned out that we got the last 2. Jeff and I high-fived, and he ran to get a card. We paid up, high as kites, and ran back to Allie's Armada. She's a dentist and makes serious bank. We'd taken the 3rd row out in anticipation of scoring the TVs. As we were putting them in, this dude in a hoodie walked up and asked if we wanted to sell one of them. He offered way more than what we paid for them, but we said, "No thanks, happy Thanksgiving." We managed to wedge them in and close the door and then went to go back home. The guy spoke up again and then offered even more money, and I said, "Hey man, no thanks." We just asked my sister to go to a Dunkin' Donuts nearby that was going to open up soon. I mean, we were ravenous after the smoky. As we were pulling away, another vehicle got right behind us. Jeff and I were so happy about our grab we weren't paying attention. But Allie finally said, "Guys, this car is right on our ass." I looked back and wow, the car was so close I could see it was there, but the lights were dim because there was like no room between it and my sister's SUV. I had a sinking feeling about who it was, and my brother and I got the cobwebs out quick. We told Allie to skip the coffee and donuts and just get us home. She was way ahead of us and made some pretty smart maneuvers to lose this vehicle, and managed a solid fake out during a last-minute U-turn and then jumping onto a freeway. We were all talking about how weird it was and just wanting to get back to my parents' house. As we were a few miles down the road, my sister said she saw lights coming up quick. By now it was around 5:30 a.m., and hardly much traffic out. The vehicle pulled right up alongside us, and there was a guy hanging out of the window with a gun. He was yelling something we couldn't hear, but we were back to being freaked out. Jeff told my sister to wait for the next exit and to take it at the last minute. Allie was not having a good time at the wheel, but she went into what we called her bitch mode. She flipped off the guy, slammed on the brakes, and then hit the gas at the last second to get on the off-ramp. She started yelling at us about going out to Black Friday and fuck your TVs, but she started driving in an erratic pattern to get back to my parents and lose this car. After a few minutes, we thought we were in the clear. But nope, they found us again. I called my dad and told him what was up, and he said to be safe and just to get home, and hung up. The car kept up with us, again riding my sister's bumper, and Jeff told her to slam on the brakes and let him hit us. We could just call the cops. She said no way and kept heading on home. These guys, who we assumed were the nuts from Schmefschmai trying to get our TVs, stayed with us until we got back to my parents' house. My parents lived way out in the country, with the closest neighbors maybe a mile to each side. But Allie slowed and pulled into our long driveway, and these guys did as well. She parked, and two guys jumped out with handguns, but stopped dead in their tracks when they heard a loud boom. My dad was in the driveway, holding his side-by-side bird gun he just shot into the turf on the side of their car. We were still in the SUV, but through the mirrors we watched as the guys jumped back into their car and backed up like all hell, and then got back onto the road and tore away. Allie was shaking with adrenaline, and my dad came running up. He only said, "Pull into the shed now." He called his second garage that had his tractor and stuff in there his shed. Allie pulled in, we locked the doors, ran into the house, and my dad called the sheriff to tell them what happened. Nothing else happened, and we collapsed after that craziness. And we woke up later that morning to my mom's breakfast and coffee and talked about it some more. Never again. I will never go to Black Friday sales. Getting threatened with guns over TVs? Nope. Next time I'll just pay full price and skip that bullshit. And wherever those guys are, fuck them. Get a job and buy your own stuff, losers. When I Gave Up Crime, submitted by Anonymous. I'm not sharing my name or location for obvious reasons. I'll start by saying that I'm not proud of what I have done or who I was. My family was kind of on the dark side of the family tree when I was growing up, and it spilled over onto me. My father was involved in a lot of shady shit. My mom left him for another guy, and my brother and I grew up basically on our own. My dad was never around. We got into lots of trouble, and not just the telling off a teacher or whatever, but real trouble with the law. For a while we were never arrested, but we were taken away to be scared straight at first. But then I finally did get arrested for breaking into a neighbor's home. Honestly, I didn't even intend to go in to steal anything. I just got a rush from that sort of thing. Anyway, my rap sheet grew. I stole a car with a friend, did 6 months in Junior Disneyland Hotel, and still didn't learn my lesson. I turned 18, left home, and my father didn't give a shit, and neither did my mom. I haven't spoken to them since. I got my GED and just said, I'm out of here. I moved in with a buddy, a real rat hole apartment, and I just got deeper and deeper into crime. And this time I was breaking into places to steal. Stores, houses, warehouses, any place I could go to get something. I did have a real day job, but like I said, I had this desire to get a rush out of stealing. For anyone listening that knows what I'm talking about, I became a very solid second story man. My roommate would brag at bars about me, and guys would pull me over to do jobs. We'd go to cities and towns far away from us and scope things out, and then blammo! I'd get us in unlocked windows or doors, and it got so that I could climb just about anything or use stuff to get up there. I'd go in, go down to the door, and let everyone in. This was back in the mid-2000s. I got an urge to go to Arizona, but needed some money. So I was saving my work money, but figured I could hit up a house or two on Thanksgiving. I never stole jewelry. That's a pain in the ass to get rid of in a pawn shop or dealer, so I would just focus on small electronics. Crap I could sell on Craigslist or whatever. So I went 2 towns over from mine and started looking through this neighborhood that seemed pretty posh. I looked for homes with families and figured there's gotta be video game consoles, computers, stuff like that. So one Thanksgiving morning, I sat in my car watching who was coming and going on this street. There were 2 houses that had sun porches in the back, and I knew I could get up onto them and then do my thing through a window. I'd learned a trick from a quote-unquote mentor, and that was to wear a hard hat and a safety vest. This way, if a neighbor saw me out there, they would think, or in theory think, I was just some kind of worker. Well, sure enough, one of the houses cleared out. I watched the family leave. I assumed they were going somewhere for Thanksgiving dinner, but seriously, I didn't give a shit. I just wanted in, get some stuff, and then beat it. I walked around the back of this house with my gear and gloves, and I got onto the roof, jimmied a window, all the while looking around to see if anyone was looking at me. Popped the screen, popped the lock, and was in like Flynn. It was a bedroom that I got into, so I just grabbed a pillowcase and got to work. I found a laptop, a PlayStation, and some other stuff and just jammed it into the bag. I went from room to room, but one door I really had to push on, and this is where things went from payday to oh shit. There was something in the way of me pushing the door open. I gave it a heavy shove, just wanting to get more stuff, and the door gave way, and what I saw will haunt me forever. In the room, which smelled so badly of urine and feces, was an old woman strapped to a bed sitting upright. She looked like that guy in the movie Seven. I could see her bones through her skin, and her eyes looked at me with zero feeling. Then I noticed what had been blocking the door. It was an old man in a wheelchair, also strapped in by his arms and legs, and he looked like he was asleep, just kind of slumped over. I stopped what I was doing. This was so gross, I almost puked. I stood for a minute, and then like a jack-off asked, "Are you okay?" The woman kind of looked at me and lolled her head. I'm a thief. I'm standing in a room that smells like death with a safety vest and a white hard hat asking 2 people who are clearly being neglected and abused if they're okay. I did the only thing I thought was right. I closed the door, I put all the stuff I was about to steal back where I found it and got out of there. Fuck the screen. I just shut the window, climbed down, and ran to my piece of shit Civic. Shaking and sitting in my car, I lit a cigarette and made doubly sure of the address and then drove to a public school where I knew there was still a payphone. Yeah, imagine that, a payphone. I even walked backwards towards it so the security camera couldn't see my face. I dialed 911 and told them what I had just seen and was completely clear that I had broken in and this was not a joke. The woman who answered didn't believe me at first, but I basically just screamed into the phone that I wasn't kidding, and I was leaving the phone off the hook as proof. I ran back to my car, peeled out of the parking lot, and I'm sure other cameras saw me, but no one ever contacted me. I went to a 7-Eleven, bought some more smokes, and then just sat there terrified. Who the hell does something like that to old people? Just box them up and leave them in a room? A while later, I did what no criminal ever should do. I went back to that street to see if anyone had showed up. Thankfully, they did. I drove right up, not slowing down, but a firefighter slowed me down and told me I had to turn around. There were 2 ambulances and cops all over the place, too. I turned around in a driveway, went back to my crappy apartment, and started packing my stuff. I was done ripping people off and was heading for Arizona that night. I have no idea what became of those two old folks or their fucked up family, but every Thanksgiving I think about what I saw, and I like to think that maybe I atoned for some of my sins by calling the cops. In a goofy way, I'm thankful I was kind of a piece of human garbage at that time, because maybe, just maybe, that broke me through, and maybe I saved some people in my desire to serve myself with their stuff. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. Some of these stories were submitted last year after Thanksgiving, and I've held on to them, so I apologize to anybody who has been waiting around to hear their story. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you would like to hear narrated on this channel, email unclejoshtruescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all, even if it's a year later. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification button to make sure that you are aware of when I upload. To save on bandwidth, find me on your favorite podcast platforms. I upload at the same time I do on YouTube. Find me on social media. All the links to that are in the description below. And I hope everyone has a safe and happy Thanksgiving holiday, if that's what you're celebrating. And if you're just having a regular day, wherever you may be around the round world, have an awesome day too. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.